So I know a lot of folks here feel a mix of anger and frustration and fear about what is coming in Trump's next term. Because there are big attacks coming down the line. But I think we have to remember, in the spirit of what Emma and Hime have been talking about, is that the future is not written in stone. What happens next depends on class struggle. What happens next depends on us. And we have to take that seriously. Our side is stronger today than it was the last time Trump was president. Because there's this new combative labor movement that Emma spoke about. Because there's the emergence of this beautiful, amazing youth movement for Palestine and an emerging student movement. And that allows us to talk about not only how are we going to fight back against Trump, but how are we going to fight back so that that fight back isn't co-opted to rebuild the fucking Democratic Party again. You can clap, guys. I don't know if you don't want to. That's okay. No pressure. The movement for Palestine, guys, like it birthed this new amazing vanguard of young people with an anti-imperialist consciousness. Like young people who are just so fucking brave, guys. Like so fucking brave, like being at Brooklyn College and seeing these like 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds like organize against Inna Vernikov, who brought a gun to campus and shame. And who aren't afraid of the police and the university administrators because they know that our cause is just and they know that we need to continue this struggle not just against the genocide, but for a free Palestine. This new generation, like, we have more struggles under our belts than we did the last time Trump was president, right? Like, we have more experience and consciousness, whether it be, the Black Lives Matter movement, whether it be folks supporting unions, like building unions in their workplaces, whether it be the hate for the for-profit healthcare industry, which we've seen a lot about, and whether it be like a rejection of capitalism. This new generation is at the forefront of something new. And students are also at the forefront of questioning the neoliberal university, the fact that we have to go into debt and pay for our universities. The fact that university isn't free, the fact that CUNY used to be free and it's not anymore, and that's bullshit. There's students questioning the investments in the state of Israel and in US imperialism. And so I think when we think about this next period, it's easy for us to fall into despair and be like, oh, Trump is gonna fucking kick our ass, right? And what we're trying to argue here with this panel is that actually there are forces to fight back, but that we have to have the strategic vision to not have that fight back rebuild a party that is going to keep us on the same freaking hamster wheel, right? So that's kind of the spirit of the discussion here. And again, comrades have been saying that there's space for that, right? Because countless people like refused to vote for the lesser evil and voted for Harris with a lot of misgivings, right? People like, we have been it's hard to express in words the depth of horror and disgust at watching a genocide over the past year on our cell phones. A genocide that is being paid for with our tax dollars and without our consent. And young people, especially, said, like, no, this is not the lesser evil. Harris is not like it. It's just a complete sort of joke of lesser evilism to be able to say, oh yes, this genocide, less evil. Like, no, it's brutal. And so. And And many of us, right, have been harassed or arrested in Democrat-led states, right, by university administrators that have been led by the Democrats. And so rejecting this logic of lesser evilism is in some ways just the first step, right? Instead, we also need to talk about this discussion of how, like, two aspects, right? How do we fight back, and how does that fight back not get co-opted by the Democratic Party? And as comrades have been highlighting, there is space for that discussion, for this debate about party. The U.S. in many ways it prides itself, right, in saying, like, we're a great democracy, right? We learn about that in school, that the U.S. is a beacon of democracy in the world, and that's bullshit. But especially in a country that, like, doesn't even have direct elections. Like, my students who are here, we talk about the Electoral College, and it's just, like, so anti-democratic. We have this, and of course that comes from the legacy of slaveholding founding fathers. If I were going to mention all the ways that the U.S. is anti-democratic, we would be here like all night, and I will not do that. But in that sense, a crucial part of the anti-democratic nature of the bipartisan regime is the difficulty to build new parties, and not just to build new parties, but to build new parties that can actually challenge the bipartisan regime, right? And that's important because we need, we've seen movements, we've been part of movements, but those movements need to consolidate into political organization that can not just fight against the right, but go further to fight against the entire capitalist system itself. And in that sense, when we talk about party, not all third parties are the same as the others. As socialists, we don't just want any third party, right? I don't know, like the No Labels Party. I don't know if you guys remember them. They, like Joe Manchin was gonna run for them. Anyway, whatever. They were like another just champion for the bosses. And so we need a party that actually is gonna defend our interests, which is the interests of the working class and oppressed. And I think we also need to take a moment in this sense to think about, again, if this question of how do we build movements that don't just get co-opted by the Democratic Party, I think we have to think, I actually am witnessing, I don't know about you guys, like that process is already like underway right now, right? And in that sense, we got to talk about leaderships, political leaderships. As Marxists, we understand that every movement has a leadership. It's usually undemocratic. They usually make decisions that either promote class struggle or class conciliation, class independence or class collaboration, mass movement or marginalization. And whether it's a movement for Palestine or for our unions, et cetera, like all of these groups have, all of these movements have leaderships. And right now we're witnessing leaderships work to rebuild the Democratic Party that is in a huge crisis because they ran a terrible campaign and, Kamala Harris lost the election. And I think we're witnessing right now that the DSA, which is the largest socialist organization in the country, argue that the role of progressives and the left has to be advisors to the Democratic Party, to tell them, yo, this is how you fucked up. This is how Kamala could have won, or whatever. And that is not our role. And we're seeing right now, in some ways, AOC's shoes being filled by Zohran Mamdani, who's running for mayor as a Democrat on a very progressive platform, right? But who's effectively building left cover for the Democratic Party that's already shown its true colors. And guys, like, we have seen this movie before. Enough, guys. Like the DSA talks about like the dirty break, how we need to work within the Democrats to someday build an alternative or whatever. And like AOC, guys, she said she was going to build a socialist bloc in Congress, and instead she voted to break a railway strike, and she stood up in front of the Democratic National Convention peddling the disgusting lie that Biden and Harris were working for a ceasefire. AOC has become part of the Democratic Party establishment. She's not going to build socialism. She's going to build the freaking Democratic Party. Or we can think about the mass movement that emerged during Trump's first term, where we had the movement for immigrants' rights, for women's rights, for Black lives. The BLM movement in 2020 was the largest mass movement in US history, united under the banner of defending Black lives. It is not true that the US working class is hopelessly racist. The fight for Black lives galvanized more people than any other issue in this entire country's history, okay? But the Democrats used the BLM movement as an opportunity for co-optation. They registered millions of people during those protests. And leaders of the BLM movement directed people into the Democratic Party. And then Biden defeated Trump, and then supporting pro-cop law and order policies, ramping up policing. After kneeling in kente cloth, freaking ridiculous, the Democrats are building cop cities and charging protesters with felonies. And this paves the way for Trump, who is going to ban discussion of Black struggle in schools, who's going to ban discussion of Black struggle in schools because he is terrified that we will know the history of this country. He is terrified of young multiracial youth that are going to stand up for Black lives. And so Trump is gonna try to ban any discussion of Black struggle in schools. He's gonna ramp up policing, and these two things are connected to each other. And so we have to learn lessons from the past, and we cannot do this again. I also, as we talk about political leadership, I'm not gonna talk about this a lot, but I just wanted to mention, it's like worth mentioning, that the PSL, I don't think, is the alternative that we need. I get why people are drawn to them. They lead marches. We've participated in marches that they have organized because we believe in unity and struggle, even though we don't agree with their politics. And they host a lot of events. With that said, they're not the organization that we need. Right now, they're promoting like pro-Assad politics in Syria. They falsely portray China as socialist, siding with the Chinese state instead of Chinese workers. And so it's not working class politics. It's not the fight for socialism, huh? Yeah. So yeah. No, it's not it, guys. And of course, as Emma was mentioning, we do need to build unity and struggle. So these criticisms shouldn't stand in the way of unity and struggle. And I think that there's actually a tendency towards unity and struggle. People get that our issues are connected. People get that united we're stronger. But often leadership seek to divide the movement, and we need to fight to unite it, right? And we need to demand that these movements be organized democratically from below. Emma mentioned assemblies that are very important, and I want to give a small but significant example. Shout out to CUNY on Strike, where CUNY on Strike organized a small but significant example where we organized an assembly at City College, at the City College encampment, and voted to hold the first sick out in the history of our union. Effectively breaking the Taylor Law, right?
Yeah.
So, and assemblies are important not just because they allow us to take the reins of struggle, but they're important because they build class consciousness and they allow us to expose and discuss against different leaderships and different political perspectives. And we need spaces like that. We need spaces like that to discuss and decide on the way forward. And as Left Voice, right, we think that we'll be one of those tendencies, right? Using our publication and discussions in workplaces and universities to be part of a process of struggle and to put forward revolutionary socialist politics. To me, it's important that, of course, it seems inevitable that in this new moment in the Trump administration, there's going to be mass class struggle again. I have a lot of faith in our class, and I have a lot of faith in the student movement. We're going to fight, guys. And I know people are going to rise up, but we've seen uprisings and struggle that on their own, they're not enough. So we need socialist organization, right? We need a socialist party that's going to meet the challenges of the moment, and it needs to be formed from the working class of all walks of life: youth, students, queer folks, people of color, people organized in their communities and workplaces. the leaderships of the working class, like Sinn Féin and Rashida Tlaib, they don't want to break with the Democratic Party. They think it's possible to compromise with the capitalists and with the bosses to be in the same party. And that's like super utopian, right? The idea that capitalists and workers can have the same interests and be represented by the same party is like bullshit crazy. Like, that's not true. And so at the heart of this debate is the fact that there's folks who are sort of thinking about an alternative, and for us to think about how to build that alternative, right? And this new realization that we need an alternative has to be made a material force, right? It'll depend on class struggle in politics, what form exactly that takes. In mass class struggle, it might even be possible that leaderships who are now part of the Democratic Party could call for a new party. Or it might, in certain circumstances, be correct to demand that they do that. And that they put their financial and political resources into building an alternative. But that doesn't mean those leaderships are going to be the ones to overthrow the capitalist class and actually build socialism. That is a task for our generation, for me, for you, for everybody here, to overcome the very limited political horizon imposed by these leaderships. And in that sense, class struggle will not bring about political organization or party automatically. The regime is extremely skilled at being undemocratic and attempting to marginalize attempts at third party. And there are leaderships that very much seek to divert class struggle into the Democratic Party. So I hear a lot of people saying things like, yeah, I'm for a party. When it exists, I will join. And sorry, guys, but I feel like that is not how it's going to work, okay? Womp womp. We actually have to fight for a working class party that fights for socialism in the heat of class struggle, fusing with radicalized vanguards that emerge from that movement. And this is part of the role, again, that we see for Left Voice, to participate in struggles, debate strategy, organize in our workplaces, in our schools. And we think that a real working class party, one that truly represents the interests of the working class, has to fight to end this capitalist system and fight for socialism. We know that we can't defeat Trump and the far right without because Trump is a symptom of a capitalist system in crisis. And so we can't defeat Trump and the far right without fighting the whole capitalist system itself, right? Because we know that as long as there is capitalism, workers are going to be alienated, we're going to be broke, we're going to live on an increasingly unlivable planet. And so it's really important that when we talk about struggle, that we talk about not just fighting the right, but fighting the right by getting to the root of the misery of this capitalist imperialist system. And so having a working class party that fights for socialism, which is what we think we need to fight for, has to have a few other key sort of features. First, internationalism, guys. Capitalism is built on the plunder of semi-colonial countries. It's built on genocide, on war. And it doesn't just look like bombs. It looks like IMF-mandated austerity that impoverishes semi-colonies all over the world. It looks like militarized borders. It looks like demanding that countries like Mexico act as U.S. border patrol, right? It looks like coups that destabilize Latin America and then criminalize migrants who come from the countries that the U.S. just couped, right? A working class that fights for a party of the working class that fights for socialism has to be anti-imperialist, but also internationalist, because the working class is connected, and that is a strength for us. Because lithium is mined in Argentina, then chips from that are produced in China, and then the cell phone itself is produced in Mexico, that's then sold to me at Walmart by a Latina working an extra shift to try to make ends meet at $7.25 a freaking hour. And at each step of the way, the capitalists extract profit. Workers around the world are connected, all working to create wealth, not for us, the workers, never for us, but for the bosses. Trump and the far right want to take advantage of the struggles of the working class to blame immigrants for the struggles of workers here. But in reality, it's the capitalists who are the enemy, who drive down wages and who profit off of our labor. And so we have to think internationally. right? We have to think about building an international party of the working class that fights for socialism, not just nationally. We also have to talk about the fight against oppression, right? Capitalism was born from the profits emerging from the European capitalist class due to slavery and the violent colonization and genocide of indigenous people. It continues to thrive on systemic oppression and sort of casual, everyday racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and ableism. And so while we have to, as Emma was explaining, we have to organize for the unity of the working class, but not just focus on like wages and healthcare, not just that. We have to unite the working class to fight oppression, right? And we've seen seeds of that in the BLM movement. Short story, guys. In Argentina, Left Voice has a sister organization in Argentina, and at one of the workplaces, comrades went on strike so that a trans coworker could use the women's bathroom, okay? Because the bosses didn't want to let her. And they went on strike for that, and they won pretty quickly, actually. The bosses were like, we are not that committed to this. Like, get back to fucking work. And actually, that struggle was really important because a year later, those same workers took over that factory. And they took it under worker control. And now, to this day, they run it. The workers, not the bosses. And to me, this story is important because it shows us the way that that struggle for one coworker, for one trans coworker, showed the way that those workers could build confidence and could say, actually, you fuckers, we run this better than you, right? You're transphobic assholes, right? And we have the strength and the power to do that. And so that's kind of the spirit that Emma was putting forward around the idea, right? An injury to one is an injury to all. And that's the spirit with which we have to organize. So I'm also just, I'm ending. So these principles, right? Self-organization, class independence, internationalism, party, these are all the historical legacy of Leon Trotsky. And that's why we call ourselves Trotskyists. Left Voice is a Trotskyist organization. And we know, as Trotsky did, that the capitalist system means misery, and it means war, and it means inequality. And we know that we have to fight for socialism. And we've been saying socialism, so probably we should say what that is, right? A society very briefly, a society organized and ruled by the working class and oppressed in service of people, not profit, where knowledge and technology are at the service of addressing the urgent issues of climate change, and reducing the time that we freaking work, guys, so we can spend the day like chilling with our friends and making art and like resting and like having a good time, right? Because capitalism doesn't let us do that, and that sucks. We fight for socialism on the path to international communism, for a world with no borders, no prisons, no classes. As Rosa Luxemburg envisioned, for a world where we are socially equal, humanly different, and totally free. And we need a political organization that's going to fight for that, right? And that's not going to emerge from the evolutionary development of any one political force. Even if every single person in this room joins Left Voice, which all of you should, we will not then be the party, okay? Like that's not the way it works, right? As I was saying, it's going to emerge from class struggle, from the lessons drawn from workers and youth in every battle that we engage in, from the growth of revolutionary socialist ideas among workers and youth. And we see the role of Left Voice, and this is why, if you agree with us, you should join us. We see the role of Left Voice as playing a role in this process to contribute to the development of the revolutionary left in the US. As Jeff was explaining earlier, we have a publication, and in the legacy of Lenin, but with the tools of the 21st century, we use the publication to put forward theoretical, programmatic, and strategic foundations for class struggle and political organization. Because we know that without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary practice, says Lenin. And I agree. And we know the power of propaganda, socialist propaganda, but also we've seen the power of like right-wing propaganda, this like Trump podcast election situation that we have seen. So we want to invite everybody here to write for us, to share your experiences as workers and students, and contribute. And so with that said, I want to end with a quote from Trotsky. He says that fascism, not that I'm saying that we're about to be in fascism, but bear with me, guys. He says that fascism as a mass movement is the party of counter-revolutionary despair, while the Communist Party is the party of revolutionary hope. And I want to say that because the spirit of what the three of us have put forward here is that this hope is not it's not metaphysical, it's not abstract, it's rooted in the real struggles of our class and of oppressed people and of youth. There are reasons for us to be hopeful that that we can organize, that we can fight, and that we can win. Thank you very much.
Yeah.